Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap an action war film called The Balkan Line. Spoilers incoming. In 1995, in the thick of the jungles of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a small military squad team led by Andrej Shatalov takes position against an unknown enemy force. Members of the team tasked by NATO include sniper Vera Kurbiva, Ilya Slashchev, Rustam Guri Mamatgarayev, sapper Oleg Beria, Barman, and rookie Kyria. Just then, a barrage of gunfire erupts and Andrei realizes their mission is compromised, so he instructs the team to make haste in locating and capturing a terrorist named Heron. Vera takes point but gets shot at while Slash ends up bloodied in the middle of a skirmish against Heron, who is trying to escape. He stabs Kyria in the back but gets knocked out by Guri and is then tied up. As a last resort to save everyone, Beria manages to set off some explosives on a cliffside, and afterward, a military helicopter rescues everyone. Amidst their successful capture of Heron, Shatay informs the superior officer, Lieutenant Colonel Aslanbek Evkoyev, that the enemy anticipated their attack, which unfortunately cost the life of Kyria. As he dies in his arms, Slash tries to beat up Heron while the men subdue them both. This angers the American official and he warns that they will suffer serious consequences from NATO for harming Heron. To spite him, Shatay throws him out of the helicopter without warning, which forces them to retrieve him down below. As punishment for the many violations the team made during the mission, they're all dishonorably discharged from the Russian Federation Armed Forces. General Somov informs the colonel that his soldiers may not be able to receive any help if they decide to come back to Russia. Though the war in Bosnia ended in 1995 due to the Daytona Accords, a conflict with the Albanians was growing, and in 1998, they start to demand independence from the Balkans. To counter their liberation army, Serbian troops are being deployed in Kosovo. Further complicating the situation a year later, where NATO orders Yugoslavia to be raided with a cluster of bombs, without the knowledge of the UN. The day of the bombing arrives in March 1999. In the middle of it, Steven takes his wife Duska to a Belgrade hospital to give birth. Just then, a massive explosion erupts from inside and everyone evacuates the building. He, unfortunately, finds his wife dead but also discovers that Dr. Jasna Blagojevic saved the baby. As the building starts to crumble, he also gets caught up in a blast and dies, leaving only the doctor and the baby alive as they escape just in time. News of the first air raid start broadcasting on TV and Prime Minister Yevgeny Primakov blames the Americans for the chaos. 3 months pass and Colonel Beck meets with General Somov in Moscow to inform him of a mission to secure Slatina airfield before the arrival of English paratroopers, thus preventing NATO to be involved. He suggests bringing along Shatay and his disgraced group of soldiers for this initiative. Meanwhile, the head of the Yugoslav police station Goran Milic talks to Shatay and presents him with two options to leave Yugoslavia. One is to deport him back to Russia and the other is to come clean with his intentions and possibly be given a job. In another Belgrade hospital, Dr. Rasna intends to quit her profession but is quickly assigned to a Kosovo clinic with Swiss Dr. Stern. The colonel then recruits Guri in the middle of a Russian-Serbian protest party on a bridge. He insists that he was gathering information on some key players involved with the Albanian terrorists. In Bosnia, during a military exercise, General Somov contacts Commander Colonel Plotov of the Russian peacekeeping force regarding the mission. Meanwhile, in a small Serbian-occupied town, the Yugoslav police discover almost all of the locals slaughtered by the Albanian terrorists. Police officer Vuk Majevski tries to locate some survivors but only manages to save a girl hiding under her bed. Meanwhile, at the Slatina airbase, Albanian terrorist leader Smuk takes over after carrying out several gruesome attacks in Kosovo. With the rest of his police force withdrawn, General Milic leaves it up to Shatay to fight back with new recruits. Colonel Beck then finally completes his recruitment of the former soldiers Beria, Vera, and Slash for the mission, with the latter only agreeing to a hefty compensation before joining. At the police station, Vuk is visibly affected by the attacks but keeps his emotions in front of his colleague, Officer Fadil. Milic comes and tells the men about another upcoming raid in the town of Salina. They then head out to confront Smuk once and for all and arrive at a checkpoint where some vehicles are held up by Albanian soldiers. Vuk goes rogue and plans to ambush the soldiers on his own while a sniper has his sights on him. He is then saved by Chate, who kills the sniper but alerts the soldiers, leading to a crossfire. While one of the terrorists escapes and others are killed, Vyuk finds an injured Boshkum and prepares to shoot him in the head, but the others persuade him to calm down. With Chate finally fulfilling his duty for Milik, he is finally permitted to leave with a new Russian passport. Later, at an undisclosed location, the former team reunites and Colonel Beck informs them that their success in the mission had secured a spot back in the Russian army, and come home as heroes of Moscow. Meanwhile, as Chate leaves for the bus, he bumps into Dr. Jasna and they both go aboard on the way to Prizren. Halfway through the journey, their bus is attacked by Smuk and his men and they are forced to undergo a security check. He interrogates Chate, who shows him his passport but gets knocked out in the process as he finds out his true identity. A Christian priest catches his attention as well and kills him for not selling out his beliefs. Jasna then protests angrily at the soldiers as they take her and the priest's son. Just as she is about to get abused by one of Smuk's men, Chate awakens and fires at them while he holds Smuk at gunpoint. He gets everyone back on the bus and they escape and reach a nearby hospital run by Dr. Stern. As people are being treated, the doctor lends him and Jasna a pickup truck to get the priest's body to his monastery near Prizren. A fellow priest recovers the body and belongings and instructs the pair to keep the boy Misho safe. They then head back on the road and takes Jasna to the hospital. By the next morning, Smuk and his men successfully take over the Yugoslav police station and severely beat up Chief Milik for information on Chate's whereabouts. Unwilling to be executed, he gets up and kills two of his men, but he shoots him right after. Vyuk, who is out for blood, holds up a knife at a young Albanian recruit but is stopped by Fadil. After a furious scuffle, he breaks down and gives up his badge, disillusioned by the ongoing conflict and the death of their superior. And so they then contact Chate and inform him about what happened. At the hospital, Jasna is treated in the same room as Misho. Marta, assistant doctor to Dr. Stern, visits and takes her to his office where Smuk is waiting for her. Stern, revealing to be his accomplice, tells him that his mission is comprised of the death of the police chief and orders him to pack up and escape as NATO will surely send their troops to retaliate and kill him. Feeling disgusted over the doctor's attitude towards him, he prevents him from leaving the airfield and kills him and his assistant. He then takes Jasna and other Serbian women they captured in their operation inside a holding area to be interrogated about Chate. He slits one of the women's throats when she refuses to respond to his question. But before he does the same thing to a little girl, she relents and reveals where he comes from. Knowing this information, he heads out to capture him and instructs his men to also capture Vyuk. After the debriefing with the RPF, Colonel Beck and his team execute their plan of attack, taking out all the guards inside the airfield. Meanwhile, Colonel Plotov readies his platoon to strategically take control of Slatina airfield before the arrival of the NATO Armored Brigade. A full fleet of about 12 Russian BTR-80s filled with Russian soldiers heads out to the designated location. Outside the road to the airfield, Chate, Vyuk, and Fadil gear up as they try to find a way through the canyon pass. Unbeknownst to him, his former team infiltrate more areas in the base and they discover a massive cache of ammunition, vehicles, and a suitcase of money. The two teams meet up, though hostile to each other at first. Colonel Beck is initially dismissive of Chate and the two police officers, but is forced to ally with them as Smuk heads back to the airfield. Meanwhile, Vera takes out one of the men in the Albanian convoy but gets hit, while the rest of the team looks for survivors in the holding cell. Chate is then surprised to find Jasna hiding behind a desk, where she apologizes to him for telling the terrorists the truth. Meanwhile, Smuk meets his second-in-command who tells him they have lost control of the airfield, so he orders the rest of his 100 men to go into full combat mode and retaliate. At the same time, the RPF tank brigade makes their way through Pristina while Colonel Beck calls General Somov to update him about the operation, with only a day left before RPF arrives when they all must disappear. After a quick rundown of the next phase of their plan, the team must hold their position for about 3 hours before reinforcements arrive the next day. Beck and Chate assign different vantage points for the team members to cover all possible entry points into the airport. Beria takes Vyuk in as a partner and surrounds the base with several explosives and traps while Vera makes her stand on top of the roof of the repair shop. The control tower will be used as the team's last resort if they are forced to retreat. On the other hand, Shate then asks the colonel to keep Jasna safe with him. As the day progresses, the team is surprised to see a local boy on his bike survey the airfield and deliver a threatening message from Smuk. A little while later, he gives Jasna a gun to protect herself and they finally kiss as their feelings for each other start to grow. Meanwhile, the RPF forces arrive in Yugoslavia and Colonel Plotov takes note that they can reach Slatina by dawn. By dusk, the team shares stories of their past exploits including their time with former member Kyria. Suddenly, Smuk and his armed forces make it to the airport. As the enemy soldiers storm through the fields, a flare is set off and the explosives are triggered, destroying the convoys. Hearing this, the team rains down a barrage of gunfire from all sides and kills everyone in sight. Smuk orders another wave of the militants to breach through but they trigger one of Beria's traps and are subsequently consumed by the fiery explosions. The team works together effectively and manages to eliminate almost half of Smuk's men. The attacks stop for a moment and a second enemy militant team goes directly toward the airport terminal. Fadil then manages to attack Smuk while driving but ends up badly wounded as his position gets shot at by a rocket launcher. The enemy offensive gets more heated which leaves him and Guri defenseless on the roof. To redirect the enemy fire, the rest of the team targets the direction of the road and takes down more of the engaged militants. During the ceasefire, at the control tower, Jasna finds the little girl she saw in the holding cell and takes her to safety. Meanwhile, Colonel Somov gets a call from the office of the president to stop the RPF's operation in Kosovo, which he refuses. Unfortunately, Colonel Plotov gets the same call and orders the convoy to stop. Smuk decides to take a new approach by bombarding the airport with mortars. This catches the team off guard leading to them falling back to the control tower one by one, except Guri who succumbs to his wounds from the explosion. They try to cover Vyuk, who is rushing towards the tower but gets his leg blown off, forcing Shate to rescue him. Some of the team gets pinned down in different areas so Slash sacrifices himself and rams a truck to destroy the mortar line. On the dawn of June 11, 1999, both sides have been crippled by the attacks. Vyuk, unable to walk back to the tower, stays behind and covers for Shate. Unfortunately, Smuk sees him and takes him down, to which Beria counters with a rocket launcher. Seeing this, Jasna tries to save him but he shields her from a bullet and lays dying. The team then manages to take out more of the terrorists but Smuk responds by cutting off Vyuk's head. As the team prepares to commit suicide, they are surprised to see the RPF arrive and they make a hasty retreat, with an unconscious Shate. All of a sudden, Fadil avenges the death of his friend by killing Smuk as he escapes. Colonel Plotov gets inside the control tower and rescues Jasna and the little girl. The RPF then face a tense standoff between the NATO forces led by General Mike Jackson. He informs the NATO general via phone that he refuses to start a Third World War against Russia. Sometime later, Shate reunites again with Jasna at a church, where their love that started during the war continues. The aftermath of the incident forced Russian soldiers to control Kosovo until 2003, but a year later, attacks swept the Serbian enclaves. By 2008, Kosovo decreed its independence but endure even more attacks against the Serbian population to this day. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.